Today I'm going to be working on a 2010 Mini Cooper S convertible.
The truth.
We're going to be putting on new rotors, new pads, and new brake lines. This is the part number for the front rotors. This is the part number for the rear rotors. This is the part number for the yellow stuff pads we are using. This is the part number for the green stuff pads we're going to be using on the rear. This is the part number for the brake lines for the front of the car. And this is the part number for the rear braided brake lines. Since we're doing the rears and the fronts at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and jack the car all the way up with 4 jack stands. I'm going to start by doing the fronts, and then I'm going to move back to doing the rears. Now that we've got the car raised up off the ground, I'm going to go ahead and take off all 4 wheels. You're going to want to open up your brake fluid cap. It's right underneath here. Just open it up. I'm going to set my cap right off to the side. Just going to let the flap hang down. You're going to want to go ahead and crack a brake line and let it drip down. I've got to go into an old pan down here. First thing you want to do on the front is go ahead and take off the little 11mm nut right up here. And we're also going to take this out of the bracket as well. Next, you're going to take off this 14mm right here on the other end of the brake line. Next, you're going to go ahead and thread in the new brake line. Next, you're going to go ahead and tighten up this bolt and nut right up here. This one down below is a 14, this one is an 11 on top. Next, we're going to take off the bolts for the caliper here. It's a 13mm socket I'm going to use on the rear end, and then we're using vice grips up front to hold the nut steady right here. Once you get both those bolts out, the caliper should come right out. Take a little bit of wiggling, but it'll come right out of there. Next, you're going to go ahead and take out your brake pads, kind of pop it right out of there. And then we'll be taking out the caliper. It's going to have, caliper bracket. It's going to have 2 bolts on the back side. These 2 bolts are 16mm. Now that the caliper bracket's off, I'm going to go ahead and take out this star bit with the T50 bit. Once you have the new rotor on, you're going to go ahead and tighten it back up with the T50 star bit. Next, when you're putting the bracket back on, it's just those 2 bolts on the back side that hold it into place. Next, you're going to put in the new brake pads. Next, you're going to spread out the piston inside the caliper here. I tend to use an old brake pad and my caliper tool. So all you do is you twist it here, and it applies pressure this way and pushes the piston back in. So for the brake pads, a style like this, that's just kind of normally rounded, is going to go on the front side. And the style like this, that's got this weird little bump in it, is going to go on the back side, because there's a sensor that sits right in there. It's this little sensor right here, it clips right in to that weird little ridge right there. Now that you got the piston pushed all the way back, go ahead and put the caliper back on there, put your 2 bolts back in. When doing the rear calipers, ensure that your parking brake is off. Alright, next we're taking off the outer part of the caliper. It's going to be using a 15mm to hold this nut steady and a 13 to pull it off at the back end. Next, you're going to be pulling out this little sensor right here. Just going to move it out of the way, and then you're going to be wiggling this caliper out of the way to get to your brake pads. Once you got the caliper off, we're going to be taking the bracket off next. It's got 2 bolts that hold it in. They're both 16mm. They're right up here and right down here. Once you get the bracket out, go ahead and pop your brake pads out. We'll be replacing them here in a minute. But next, we're going to take out this star bit. It is a T50 bit. Once that star bit's out, your caliper will come right off. Once you got the new rotor on, be sure to tighten it up with the star bit. And then we're going to go ahead and put the bracket on, same way you took it off. Once you get the bracket back on, you're going to go ahead and put your brake pads back in. With these Coopers, it's got this weird little lip thing, and it goes on the inside brake pad. When it comes to doing the rear brakes, you're going to need a specialty tool with like these little teeth, because on the caliper, you can see it's got those little slots. It needs the teeth to grab onto those and actually twist as you're bringing in the piston on the caliper. On this kit, there's a left-hand side and a right-hand side, and it kind of corresponds with the car. You use this one on the left-hand side of the car, this one on the right-hand side of the car. I'll leave the link for this down in the description. I got it down on Amazon. So once you got the tool in place, you gonna go ahead and turn it, and then it will rotate the piston in here and drive it back into the caliper. Once you got the piston all the way in, you're gonna bring it up and you're gonna put it on where the brake pads are at. You will probably have to squish these in a little bit to get your caliper to fit, and these will move just a little bit. Once you have the caliper back in place, just go ahead and put these little bolts back in. We'll tighten them up here in just a second. But first, I'm gonna go ahead and plug this sensor back in. Just like the front, it kind of clips in to right there on the brake pad. Just like that. When you go to tighten the bolt, you have to hold the nut steady with a 15mm wrench and tighten the bolt with a 13mm. You're gonna want to loosen up this little nut right here. It's 11mm, and then it should start leaking brake fluid down. So get yourself a little catch can or something underneath. Once you got that apart, you're gonna come over to your caliper, and on the back side of the caliper, you're gonna see the brake line come in right here. It is a 14mm wrench you're gonna get on there and turn that off with. Don't forget to remove your brake line out of this bracket right here on your shock or coilover. Next, you're gonna thread your new brake line into the caliper over here. Then you're gonna set it up in the bracket over here, and then we'll be screwing it in up there to the hard brake line in just a minute. When you go to tighten up the brake line on this side, you're going to use your 11mm on this side and a 14 on this side. Once you got all that back together and tight, we're going to be bleeding our brakes next. So go ahead and get your little bleed port ready. Typically you want to start with the brakes that are the farthest away from the master cylinder. So I'm starting on the back right. You're going to go ahead and you're going to crack the line open and bleed out any air that's in the system right now into a bottle. Go ahead and have your assistant pump the brakes a few times. Be sure you're topping off your brake fluid as you go. You're gonna go ahead and do this to each corner. You're gonna have your assistant push and hold the brake pedal as you tighten the screw. And be sure to put your cap back on as well. You want to ensure you have a good firm brake pedal. Once you got all that done, go ahead and start putting your tires back on. Once you get the wheels back on, we're gonna go ahead and lower the car back down a little bit, just so the wheels are touching, so we can go ahead and snug up all our lug bolts. Once you get the car back on the ground, you'll be all done. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comment section below, and I hope this video helped.